Shalom. Welcome to Center of Gravity. I'm Rabbi Eric Yanoff. Today we're going to elaborate on a little known fact about me that I mentioned in an earlier episode and said we would return. So, promise kept. The little known fact, one of two that I share in those icebreakers where people say, share something that no one else knows about you in this room. My little known fact is that I was, both in high school and in college, the mascot for my school. I've already dropped a teaser that you want to know what the other little known fact is. Stay tuned, future information. I was the mascot at Upper Dublin High School in northern Montgomery County and at Princeton University. I was the Upper Dublin Cardinal and the Princeton Tiger. In high school, I was known for sliding the entire length of the basketball court, at football games, being a part of, in a choreographed way, but made it look like I had a little mischief, the marching band halftime show, being lifted into the air by the cheerleaders, causing all sorts of general chaos all over the place. And in Princeton, when I got to Princeton, I figured I'd give it a try. I auditioned. You had to audition at Princeton for the mascot. You had to have a characteristic trick or stunt, and I rode a bicycle while the Princeton Tiger. This was not a problem except for the tail. I had to hold the tail with one of the handlebars of the bicycle so that it would not get caught in the spokes, which was disastrous. I did this for football games, and very rarely, but in one notable moment, I did it for Princeton basketball games. I'm going to tell you that notable moment now. I was the mascot for the 1996 Princeton basketball upset against UCLA in the NCAA tournament. There were about a half dozen of us who were on call to possibly be the mascot. We would do it at all sorts of events, alumni events, things like that. And I got a call not expecting to be the basketball rotation, because that was not one that I did as frequently, that the person who had wanted to do it was unable to make the trip to Indianapolis. I didn't think I was able to make the trip to Indianapolis, but I cleared my schedule. I actually had a ticket to fly down to Florida to meet up with the family of a friend of mine. And I said to Dave, this friend of mine in college, look, we're going to lose in the first round. I'll be back. I'll get on the flight, no problem. And then I said to my other friend, Damien, who had wanted to go, but at the moment had not made a flight, I said, Damien, he looked loosely like me at the time. I said, Damien, I'll be back. I'll take the flight. But if on the off chance I don't, here's my student ID. You'll go on the flight. You'll go to Florida. Remember, this was before 9/11. This was when you could actually, though questionably, do that kind of thing. But Damien was going to go to Florida on the off chance that we made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. It was a great game. You can go on YouTube. You can see the end seconds of that game, narrated Coach Pete Carrill, and the backdoor pass that was Princeton's signature move. These little guys against the defending champ UCLA basketball team. It was a great game. It was very intense in the very sweaty Tiger costume. They flew me out there. They took care of everything. I just had to drop my mascot costume, and then there was a place to pick up mascot costumes at the tournament at the first round. At the end of the game, if you go on YouTube, it's possible, and we'll show it here as well. If you go on YouTube, you can see me running past, giving high fives and hugs to all the basketball players, Gabe Lewis and others. It was a heady night, and I remember going into a side hallway of the basketball arena and calling my friend Damien and screaming, as Damien, of course, and everyone at Princeton was celebrating as well, saying, "You're going to Florida, you're going to Florida, I'm staying here." It reminded me of the scene in Back to the Future when Chuck Berry's cousin is on stage with Michael J. Fox, and he runs off the stage and says, "Hey, Chuck, get a load of this." That was what it was like to be in the payphone on the side of something monumental. So Damien went to Florida. I stayed on for the second round of the tournament where we got creamed, I believe, by Mississippi State. That's just one story of the opportunities that being the mascot afforded me. It was fun. It was great. And it also had a serious side to it. When I mostly did football games, when I rode my bike onto the football field, onto the track around the football field, wherever I was relative to the crowd and the stands, there was a campus police security detail tracking me between me and the crowd. Why, you ask? Because the year before I had started in my first year of Princeton, the year before that, the Cornell band had attacked the Princeton Tiger mascot. When I say attacked, the band came off the field and pummeled the person in the costume, leaving the person having to go to the hospital. The bass drum player in particular of the Cornell band had continuously hit the Princeton Tiger with a mallet. You may be laughing at this point in time. You may not know whether it's okay to laugh. I give you permission. Everyone was okay. But from that point on, the Tiger mascot had a security detail. When the bass drummer was asked why or what was going through his head when he was pummeling that mascot, he said, I think, significant words. Not a stupid guy, not an unaware guy. This guy said, in that moment, I forgot that there was a human being inside the tiger costume. It was just a symbol of our opponent, our enemy at the time. In that moment, I learned something from the Cornell bass drummer. I learned what it means to represent something bigger than what we individually are. In Hebrew, the word for that is dugma, an exemplar. When that bass drummer saw that tiger mascot, he didn't see a human being. He saw Princeton, their opponent in the football game. That's how the human mind can work in intensely emotional moments. And that is a lesson still today that I carry as a rabbi. Not often in costume, though sometimes in costume. I brought a little show and tell today from a Purim several years ago when a member of our community made me a Philly fanatic costume. I'm sharing this with you right now. Kate Cohen was incredible. You can see she even added a kippah to the Philly fanatic, and this was my Purim costume for a sports-themed Purim. This was so much fun, by the way. We added, actually, there's tubing that goes all the way down the snout, and we added a red party blower so I could even hit little kids on the top of their kepis like the Philly fanatic does with the tongue. My favorite costume of all time, except perhaps, and another time I'll mention this, when I dressed up as Jason Kelsey at this when he gave the Super Bowl speech after the first Super Bowl victory. I also got to do that on Purim. We'll talk about Jews and sports another time. But for now, most of the time as a rabbi, I am an exemplar in a different way. A rabbi, as I understand it, represents a treasure chest of wisdom over millennia, a people, a way of living, a way of being, a way of seeing the world, a way of seeing a specific mission for the Jewish people in the world. I take this aspect of my rabbinate very seriously. It inspires me, it compels me to walk the walk as much as in giving sermons, I talk the talk. When I was in rabbinical school, I read an essay by one of my teachers, Rabbi Joel Roth, who had written this in the context of the Ramah camping movement that had been so much a part of my path to the rabbinate, as I've mentioned. And he imagined a moment when in tefillah, in Jewish prayer at Camp Ramah, there was someone reminding the chanichim, the campers, not to chew gum because they're talking to God. They're in this moment, and chewing gum felt at that time a little disrespectful. And Rabbi Roth shared the experience, as I remember the essay, of seeing someone who was asking chanichim not to chew gum while chewing gum. You can't do that. If you're going to be a dugma, an exemplar, a role model, you have to do the thing that you are saying. I believe the essay was entitled, "Do as I Say and as I Do." When I accepted and assumed the role of rabbi, I realized that I was representing for many people so much more than any learning or class or sermon or experience or life cycle moment that I was engaging with them. I was one of the representatives of Judaism, of the Jewish people. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. I aspire to be a good role model, an example. And in many ways, when I'm not perfect, when I'm able to be honest with myself about that and vulnerable with others, as I have been, part of being that example is to be a dugma, an exemplar of that aspirational approach, to say, I don't do this perfectly, you don't have to do it perfectly, but do it with me, striving, trying, doing our best, recognizing when we don't hit the mark, and having a mechanism to aspire to do it better the next time, to applaud the moments when we do hit the mark, when we feel whole and with integrity in our roles, and to forgive ourselves when we don't hit the mark and aspire for a better future. There is a key rule to being a mascot, and that is whenever you are in public view or possibly in public view, you cannot remove any part of the costume. That is the first of any commandments that is in the 10 Commandments of the being a mascot. It can be scarring to children, of course, but also it's hard to represent that bigger thing when you take off publicly part of it. I remember one of the gigs that I had as the Princeton Tiger was that I would be the Tiger mascot for what was called and is called the P-Raid. The P-Raid is part of Princeton reunions. It's tens of thousands of Princeton alumni and their families come back every late May, early June, and march through campus class by class with a lot of fanfare. There's all sorts of tents and parties over a several-day extravaganza, and the culminating moment is this P-Raid, a parade. And I, except when I was a senior and I marched myself, becoming an alumnus, I was the Princeton Tiger for 3 years in scorching heat of early spring in New Jersey. I would have to run into a midpoint, and I had a key to get into, or access to get into, this little tiny bathroom where I would take off the head, douse myself in water, cool off for about 3 minutes, but not in public, The room had no windows, then put the head back on and rejoin the parade. Because when you represent something bigger than yourself, you have to put your whole self in. You can't be part. Even when I'm representing Judaism in a way that makes me imperfect and aspirational to do it all, I have to be whole with myself, be integrated with myself. I can't say, well, today I'm not going to be Jewish. I don't get to do that. I don't get to have, let's call it a treif day, a non-kosher day where I eat all the other food. Like the joke about the rabbi who goes on a distant vacation and thinks now he can have his treif day. He doesn't have to be a rabbi. No one's going to see him. Goes to a place where there are very few Jews and goes and sits down and says, I'm going to have a full roasted pig. And as luck would have it, at that moment, the synagogue president walks in, also on vacation. And the rabbi looks up at the president, looks down at the pig, looks up at the president, looks down at the pig, sees how the pig is served and says, I ordered a baked apple. What a way to serve the baked apple in the pig's mouth. That's a cover. You can't do that, even when you think no one's looking. When you are a dugma, when you are a mascot, when you are a representative of something bigger than ourselves, when we are filling that role, we have an obligation. I know of young adults who, for a lot of reasons, found themselves on college campuses with very few Jews, whose Judaism became more important to them in that moment because they realized that they were speaking or representing something larger than they. And they would come back to me and say, Rabbi, how do I do this? There aren't other Jews to do it for me or even with me. It is a blessing to be a dugma, an exemplar, a role model, a representative of Judaism for the whole world, for other Jews, and for others who may be looking critically, may be looking inquisitively and curiously. As a rabbi, I find this one of the greatest blessings of my life, to be that entry point, to be that focal point. The truth is, when you're a rabbi, there is nothing that I do as a rabbi that any one of you could not do as a Jewish exemplar. It doesn't take a rabbi to have a wedding or a bar bat or brit mitzvah or a funeral. I maybe shouldn't be saying this. It's not so good for job security. What it takes is someone who's willing to step into that role and be a representative in that moment of life cycle, that milestone moment, and say, I'm bringing you this treasure trove of wisdom. To be that dugma, that representative, that entree into something that is much bigger than any one of us. In my life, it has been an immeasurable blessing. It is sometimes a liability. Sometimes people, especially when they are in pain, when they are asking hard questions about how they imagine God in a moment of misfortune and difficulty and vulnerability, sometimes they want to beat up a little bit on their Judaism. I imagine that God can take that, kind of like when you're pounding into the pillow in tears in a moment of despair. It's part of a relationship to be in anger and disappointment and even a sense of loss and feeling lost. That is part of being in relationship. And if you are the representative, as I am at times, people have come to me and, like that bass drummer, want to beat up on the cymbal, on the mascot, on the dugma in moments of pain. Net, it has been a privilege and a blessing thus far in my life, in my calling, in my career. When I stand up in front of a group of Jews to open their hearts and minds to what Judaism can teach, how Judaism can bring comfort to them, I'm very mindful of my role. When I stand at a moment of Jewish pain or even Jewish shame and embarrassment, I'm very mindful of that role. when I hold people who are blaming God and blaming their religious sensibilities for the pain that they are now feeling and asking unanswerable questions, I'm mindful of that role. We can't take off the mask in that moment. It's not a mask, it's who we are to that person. For Center of Gravity, I'm Rabbi Eric Yanoff. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to Center of Gravity. We are working to make this podcast as engaging and meaningful as we can, and so we need your help. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, thoughts, ideas for future podcasts, or any other ways that we can reach you, please email us at centerofgravity@adathisrael.org. Thanks so much for tuning in. Shalom.